My daughter texted me, "Don't call me anymore. I'm tired of you and your requests." I said nothing. 2 months later, she called. "Dad, Oliver and I urgently need money for rent." I replied, "I'm sorry. I don't know who you are. I don't have a daughter." And I hung up. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story until the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had always believed that being a father was forever. That no matter what storms came, the bond between parent and child would weather them all. For 69 years, I lived by that philosophy, and after my wife Susan died, I raised our daughter Evelyn alone in our modest home in Naples, Florida. Susan passed away from ovarian cancer when Evelyn was just 14. I watched my wife deteriorate over 18 brutal months while trying to shield our daughter from the worst of it. After the funeral, it was just the two of us. I was 42 years old, a civil engineer with a stable career, suddenly responsible for guiding a grieving teenager through high school alone. I turned down a promotion that would have required relocating to Atlanta because I didn't want to uproot Evelyn during such a vulnerable time. I attended every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every softball game. When she struggled with chemistry, I hired a tutor. When she wanted to attend a private academy for her junior and senior years, I drained my emergency fund to make it happen. That was what fathers did, right? You sacrifice, you provide. You make sure your child has every advantage you never had. Evelyn got into the University of Florida in Gainesville. I was so proud. I paid her tuition, her housing, her meal plan, and sent her extra money every month for books and expenses. When she decided to pursue a master's degree in marketing, I supported that too, even though it meant postponing my own retirement plans by 3 years. She graduated and moved to Miami, where she met Oliver at a networking event. Oliver was charming, confident, and full of big ideas. He called himself an entrepreneur, though I never quite understood what business he was actually in. He talked about investment opportunities, cryptocurrency ventures, and consulting contracts that were always just about to close. When they got engaged, Evelyn asked if I could help with the wedding. Of course I said yes. What father wants his daughter to compromise on her special day? We held the ceremony at a beautiful waterfront venue in Clearwater. 300 guests, live band, open bar, flowers everywhere. The final bill came to $48,000. I wrote the check without hesitation. That was my daughter getting married. That was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. After the wedding, the phone calls started coming more frequently. At first, they seemed reasonable. Evelyn and Oliver were starting their life together. They needed help getting established. That made sense to me. "Dad, Oliver's launching a tech startup. We need $25,000 for initial operating costs. It's a sure thing. We'll pay you back with interest once the funding round closes." I transferred the money that same day. 6 months later, another call. "Dad, the startup fell through. The investors backed out. We're stuck with $60,000 in debt. Can you help us clear it?" Just this once? I helped. That was what family did. Then came the condo. "Dad, we found the perfect place near Brickell. It's an investment property. Real estate in Miami never goes down. We need $150,000 for the down payment. Think of it as securing your grandchildren's future." I didn't have grandchildren yet, but the logic seemed sound. I liquidated part of my retirement portfolio and sent the money. The pattern became clearer over the following years, though I refused to see it. Evelyn would disappear for weeks, sometimes months. No calls, no texts, no visits. Then, suddenly, she would reappear with that familiar tone in her voice, the one that said she needed something. Mortgage payments got tight, $40,000. Oliver's consulting contract fell through, $15,000. Medical emergency that insurance wouldn't cover, $12,000. Car repairs after an accident, $8,000. Legal fees for a case she never fully explained, $22,000. Every single time, I said yes. What else would a father do? The conversations became transactional. Evelyn would ask how I was doing, but I could hear the impatience in her voice when I actually tried to answer. If I mentioned that I was feeling lonely in the big house by myself, she would make sympathetic noises and then quickly steer the conversation toward her own problems. When I tried to tell her about the chest pains I had been experiencing, she cut me off. "Dad, that's probably just heartburn. You should take an antacid. Anyway, I need to talk to you about something important." The important thing was always money. Last spring, I called her on her birthday. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail singing happy birthday, the way I had done every year since she was born. She texted back 3 days later. "Thanks, Dad. Been super busy." No phone call, no real conversation, just a perfunctory text message. 2 weeks later, I called again. My cardiologist had scheduled some tests at a clinic in Fort Myers, and I was scared. The symptoms had been getting worse, and my doctor's expression during the last appointment had worried me. I just wanted to hear my daughter's voice. I needed to feel connected to someone who cared about me. Evelyn answered, and I could immediately hear the irritation. "Dad, what is it now?" "Sweetheart, I just wanted to talk. I haven't heard from you in weeks, and I have some medical tests coming up. I'm a little nervous, and I thought maybe we could—" "Dad, seriously, I don't have time for this right now. Oliver and I are dealing with our own stress. Can this wait?" My chest tightened, and not just from the heart condition. "Evelyn, I'm your father. I'm just asking for a few minutes to— I really can't do this right now. I'll call you later, okay?" She hung up. Later never came. That night, I sat on my back porch watching the sun set over the Gulf of Mexico. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink, the kind of sunset Susan and I used to watch together with glasses of wine. Now I sat alone with my phone in my hand, staring at Evelyn's contact photo from her wedding day. My phone buzzed. A text message from Evelyn. I expected an apology. Maybe she had reflected on how she had dismissed me earlier. Maybe she felt bad about rushing me off the phone. Instead, I read, "Don't call me anymore. I'm tired of you and your requests." I read it 3 times, trying to make sense of the words. My requests? What requests had I ever made of her? I had called to talk about my health. I had reached out because I was lonely and scared. When had asking to speak with my own daughter become a burden? When had needing emotional support become an imposition? The phone felt heavy in my hand. I looked at the photographs on the side table next to my chair. Evelyn as a baby, Evelyn's high school graduation, Evelyn in her wedding dress, smiling radiantly. In every photo, I was there, smiling, proud, loving. Had I been blind this entire time? I didn't respond to the text. I simply set the phone down and sat there as darkness fell over the water. The evening was warm, but I felt cold inside. I didn't call her the next day. I didn't call the next week. I went to my medical appointments alone. The cardiologist ran an EKG, a stress test, and an echocardiogram. The results showed some concerning irregularities. He prescribed medication and recommended lifestyle changes. "Is there someone who can drive you home?" the nurse asked after the appointment. "These tests can be stressful, and you shouldn't be alone right now." "I'll be fine," I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. I drove myself home and sat in my empty living room. The house felt enormous and quiet. Susan had filled it with life, with music and laughter and warmth. After she died, Evelyn's occasional visits had at least given me something to look forward to. But now, even that illusion was gone. 8 weeks passed. 8 weeks of silence. 8 weeks of learning what it meant to truly be alone. But something unexpected happened during those weeks. I started to rebuild. A fellow veteran from my old Navy days, Marcus Chen, called to invite me to a volunteer event in Sarasota. His local VFW chapter was organizing a charity drive for homeless veterans. I almost declined, but something made me say yes. That Saturday, I met a dozen other retired servicemen and women. We sorted donations, packed care packages, and shared stories. For the first time in months, I felt useful. I felt seen. These people didn't want anything from me except my company and my help with a meaningful cause. Marcus invited me to join their weekly coffee meetup. I started going every Thursday morning. We talked about everything: politics, sports, books, our families. When I mentioned my situation with Evelyn in passing, several of the men nodded knowingly. "My son hasn't called me in 2 years except when he needs bail money," one man said quietly. "My daughter only visits when she wants me to babysit," another added. I wasn't alone in this experience. That realization was both comforting and deeply sad. I also joined a book club at the Naples Public Library. We met every other Tuesday evening to discuss whatever novel we had chosen that month. The group was mostly retirees, about half men and half women, all of us looking for intellectual stimulation and social connection. I discovered that life could exist without waiting for my phone to ring. I could have conversations that didn't revolve around money. I could make plans without constantly wondering if Evelyn would cancel at the last minute. For the first time since Susan died, I felt like myself again. Then, on a humid Tuesday evening in July, my phone rang. Evelyn's name flashed across the screen. My hand hovered over the phone. Something inside me had shifted during those 8 weeks of silence. Something had crystallized into a cold, hard truth that I could no longer ignore. I answered, "Dad." Her voice was different now, urgent, almost panicked. Not the dismissive tone from our last conversation. "Dad, Oliver and I really need your help. We're behind on rent, and we need $7,500 by Friday, or we're getting evicted. Can you transfer it today?" No apology, no acknowledgement of the text she had sent 2 months ago. No, "How are you?" or "I'm sorry I haven't called." Just another request. Another demand disguised as a crisis. The words came out of my mouth before I had even fully formed the thought. They were calm, cold, and final. "I'm sorry. I don't know who you are. I don't have a daughter." I hung up. My hands were not shaking. My heart was not racing. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. Sharp, crystal clear clarity about what I had to do next. The phone rang again within minutes. Then again. Then again. 15 calls in the first hour. I turned off my phone and sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by a silence that felt both terrifying and liberating. What had I just done? I made myself a cup of coffee and opened my laptop. If I was going to do this, if I was really going to stand my ground, I needed to understand exactly what I was standing against. I needed to see the truth in black and white. I started with my bank statements, going back as far as the online portal would allow. The numbers told a story I had been too desperate or too blind to see. I created a spreadsheet. Every transaction to Evelyn and Oliver over the past 8 years went into that document. As the total climbed, I felt physically ill. $25,000 for the startup, $60,000 for the failed venture, $150,000 for the condo down payment, $40,000 for mortgage help, $15,000 for the consulting contract, $12,000 for medical bills, $8,000 for car repairs, $22,000 for legal fees, another $18,000 for property taxes, $9,000 for credit card debt, $13,000 for what Evelyn had called emergency living expenses. The list went on, small amounts mixed with large ones. A steady stream of financial hemorrhaging that I had somehow normalized over the years. The final total made me set down my coffee cup because my hands were shaking now. $412,000. Over 8 years, I had given my daughter and her husband $412,000. That was not family helping family through temporary hardship. That was financial exploitation on a massive scale. I scrolled through the transactions again, looking for any evidence of repayment. There was none. Not a single dollar had ever been returned. Not one loan had ever been repaid, despite repeated promises. I pulled out a notepad and began writing down everything else, not just the money, but the pattern of behavior. The missed holidays when they had promised to visit but canceled last minute because Oliver had a work emergency. The Christmas I spent completely alone because Evelyn said they needed to be with Oliver's family in Atlanta. The time I fell and fractured my wrist and spent 6 weeks in a brace, and Evelyn never once came to check on me. The birthday cards I sent that were never acknowledged. The voicemails I left that went unreturned for days or weeks. The conversations that felt rushed, transactional, emotionally empty. How many times had I made excuses for them? They were busy. They were young. They were under financial stress. Marriage was hard. Building a career was challenging. When had I stopped being a father and become just an ATM machine? My phone was still turned off, but I could imagine the messages piling up. Probably not apologies. Probably anger and accusations. How dare I hang up on her? How dare I refuse to help? The fear crept in then. Not fear of Evelyn's anger, because I had weathered that before in small doses, but fear of the unknown. What did a father do when he decided to stop being used? What did love look like when it required boundaries instead of blank checks? I thought about my own father, who had died when I was 30. He had been a tough man, pragmatic and unsentimental, a World War II veteran who believed in hard work and personal responsibility. What would he tell me now? I could almost hear his voice. Noah, you taught that girl to walk. You can teach her to stand on her own 2 feet too, even if it breaks your heart to do it. My hand steadied. I opened a new document on my laptop and titled it Plan of Action. First, I needed to protect my finances. Tomorrow, I would go to my bank and make absolutely sure Evelyn had no access to any of my accounts. I had added her as a beneficiary and authorized user years ago, just in case of emergencies. That needed to end immediately. Second, I needed documentation. I would print out every bank statement, every text message, every email, every piece of evidence that showed this pattern. Not because I wanted to hurt Evelyn, but because I needed to protect myself. If she came at me with accusations or threats, I needed to be able to defend my position with facts. Third, I needed professional advice. Legal advice, certainly. I wasn't planning to sue my own daughter, but I needed to know my rights. What if she showed up at my door demanding entry? What if Oliver made threats? What if they tried to claim I owed them something legally? The thought made my stomach turn. I didn't know Oliver well. He had always kept me at arm's length, polite but distant. But I knew he was Evelyn's primary influence now. The coldness in her voice, the transactional nature of our relationship, all of that had intensified after she married him. Or had I just not noticed it before? I turned my phone back on. 43 missed calls, 28 text messages. I didn't read them. Instead, I called Marcus Chen from my veterans group. Noah, I was just thinking about you, Marcus answered warmly. We're planning a fishing trip next weekend. You interested? Marcus, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I need your help, and I need you to not judge me for what I'm about to tell you. Brother, I've known you long enough. Nothing you say is going to surprise me. I told him everything. When I finished, there was a long pause. It's about damn time, Marcus finally said. I've been watching you get used for months, and I've been biting my tongue. Good for you, Noah. Good for you. Wednesday morning, I walked into SunTrust Bank at 9 o'clock sharp. I had barely slept, but I had never felt more awake. Marcus had stayed on the phone with me until nearly midnight, helping me organize my thoughts and plan my next steps. The banker, a professional woman named Andrea Morrison who had helped me refinance my mortgage 2 years earlier, smiled as I sat down in her office. Mr. Caldwell, how can I help you today? I need to remove my daughter from all of my accounts, I said clearly. Checking, savings, investment accounts, everything. And I need to make sure no one but me can access them going forward. Andrea's smile faltered slightly. Oh, is everything all right? It will be, I said. The process took nearly an hour. Paperwork, signatures, new account numbers, new PIN codes, new security questions. Evelyn would receive a notification letter within 5 business days, Andrea explained. Until then, technically she could still access the accounts if she tried, but Andrea flagged everything with a note that any unusual activity should trigger an immediate alert to me. Is there anything else I can help you with? Andrea asked gently. Something in her eyes told me she had seen this before, that I was not the first parent sitting in her office protecting themselves from their own child. Yes, I said. I need to speak with someone about estate planning. My will needs to be completely updated. Andrea nodded and scheduled me an appointment with the bank's estate planning specialist for the following week. As I left the bank, I felt both relieved and anxious. I had just severed Evelyn's access to my financial life. There was no going back from this. Marcus met me for lunch at a seafood restaurant on Fifth Avenue. Over grouper sandwiches and iced tea, I showed him the spreadsheet I had created. He let out a low whistle when he saw the total. 412,000. Noah, that's not helping family, that's being robbed. I know that now, I said quietly. What are you going to do when she calls again? Because she will. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to have a calm, rational conversation where I explain why I can't keep doing this. But another part of me knows that won't work. She'll just manipulate me again. Marcus set down his sandwich and looked at me seriously. Listen to me. You need a lawyer. Not eventually. Right now. Today. Someone who specializes in elder law and family financial abuse. Because that's what this is, Noah. Abuse. The word hit me hard. Abuse. I had never thought of it that way. Evelyn was my daughter. How could it be abuse? But Marcus was right. The pattern, the manipulation, the complete disregard for my well-being, the endless demands, the threats disguised as emergencies. That was abuse. I know someone, Marcus said. Edwin Harper. He's an attorney in Fort Lauderdale who handles cases like this. He helped my buddy Tom when Tom's son tried to get power of attorney while Tom was recovering from surgery. Give him a call. That afternoon, I sat in my home office and called Edwin Harper's law firm. His assistant scheduled me for a consultation the next morning. When my phone rang that evening, I let it go to voicemail. It was Evelyn. Her message started angry, then shifted to confused, then ended with barely concealed rage. Dad, what the hell is going on? I tried to use the emergency credit card you gave me, and it was declined. Did you cancel it? Are you seriously doing this right now when we're about to lose our home? Call me back immediately. I saved the voicemail. Then I opened my text messages. The thread from Evelyn was brutal. Dad, this isn't funny. Call me back. We're serious about the eviction. We need that money today. Fine. Be that way. Don't come crying to us when you're old and sick and need help. Then came a message from Oliver. I rarely heard from him directly, which made this message all the more significant. Noah, I don't know what Evelyn said to you, but this is cruel. We've always been there for you. This is how you repay us. Always been there for me? I read that message 3 times, my anger building with each pass. When? When had they been there? When I broke my wrist? When I had my heart tests? When I called lonely and frightened and got sent to voicemail? Then came the message that changed everything, the one that removed any lingering doubt. From Oliver. Look, I'll be straight with you. Evelyn only stayed in contact because I told her she had to. She wanted to cut you off years ago. We needed the money. You should be grateful we even bothered. I stared at the screen. Read it again. Took a screenshot. There it was. The truth, unvarnished and ugly. Evelyn had wanted to cut me off years ago. They had kept me around exclusively for my money. Oliver had just admitted it in writing. I forwarded the screenshot to my own email. Then I called Marcus. You're not going to believe what just happened, I said. Edwin Harper's office was in a sleek building overlooking the intracoastal waterway. He was a man in his early 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the demeanor of someone who had seen every variation of family dysfunction imaginable. I sat across from him in a leather chair and explained everything. The money, the pattern, the text from Evelyn, the confession from Oliver. I showed him the spreadsheet, the bank statements, the text messages. When I finished, Edwin leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. Mr. Caldwell, I'm going to be direct with you, he said. What you're describing is textbook financial exploitation of an elderly person. It's more common than you would think, and yes, it often happens with adult children. The good news is that you've already taken the most important step. You've stopped the flow of money. But we need to make sure you're protected moving forward. Protected how? I asked. Restraining order if necessary. Documentation of all communication, which you've already started. Updated power of attorney documents that explicitly exclude Evelyn and Oliver. A new will that clearly states your intentions. And frankly, Mr. Caldwell, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that they might escalate. Escalate how? Show up at your house, make accusations to authorities, try to turn other family members against you, file frivolous lawsuits. When you cut off someone who has been exploiting you financially, they rarely go quietly. His words proved prophetic sooner than I expected. That night, I received a voicemail from Evelyn that was pure venom. We know you went to a lawyer. You're trying to make us look bad, you selfish old man. You just declared war, Dad. And trust me, you're going to lose. We have documentation. We have proof that you promised us that money. Everyone is going to know what kind of person you really are. I forwarded it to Edwin immediately. His response came within minutes. Perfect. Save everything. This helps our case significantly. 2 days later, Edwin sent a formal cease and desist letter to Evelyn and Oliver. It was polite but firm, demanding that all contact cease immediately unless it was through legal counsel. They ignored it. On Sunday afternoon, I was preparing a simple dinner for myself when my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Evelyn's white BMW in my driveway. My heart rate spiked, but I had prepared for this. Marcus was already in my living room, sitting quietly on the couch. Edwin had advised me to have a witness present if they showed up. I had also called the Naples Police Department's non-emergency line that morning and explained the situation. Officer Jennifer Walsh had been sympathetic and professional. If you feel threatened at any point, call 911 immediately, she had instructed. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. Evelyn and Oliver stood on my porch. Evelyn looked tired, her makeup slightly smudged, wearing jeans and a wrinkled blouse. Oliver was in business casual attire, his expression cold and calculating. Dad, we need to talk, Evelyn said. Hello, Evelyn. If you have something to say, you can say it through your attorney to my attorney. Your attorney? Her voice rose. Are you serious right now? We're family. Are we? I kept my voice level. When was the last time you visited me without needing money? When was the last time you called just to see how I was doing? That's not fair, Oliver interjected. We're busy. We have lives. You can't expect us to drop everything for you all the time. I'm not asking you to drop everything for me, I said. I'm asking you to treat me like a human being instead of an ATM machine. Evelyn's face flushed. Oh, here we go. The martyr act. You gave us money because you wanted to. We never forced you. I pulled out my phone and read from Oliver's text message. Evelyn only stayed in contact because I told her she had to. We needed the money. The color drained from Evelyn's face. Oliver's jaw tightened. Get off our property, Oliver suddenly shouted. This is my property, I said calmly. You're the ones who need to leave. You can't do this. Evelyn's voice cracked. We're going to lose everything. We have nowhere to go. What kind of father are you? What kind of daughter tells her father not to call anymore? I replied quietly. What kind of daughter only reaches out when she needs money? Oliver grabbed Evelyn's arm. Come on, we're wasting our time with this bitter old man. Let him rot here alone. But Evelyn was staring at me with something I couldn't quite read. Shock, perhaps. Or maybe she was finally seeing me as a person instead of a resource. Then Oliver pulled her away, and the moment passed. They drove off. I closed the door and slid down against it, my legs finally giving out. Marcus came over immediately, his hand on my shoulder. You did great, Noah. You stood your ground. I had been strong during the confrontation. But now, in the safety of my own home with my friend beside me, I let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. I had just sent my daughter away. For 3 days, blessed silence. No calls, no texts, no unexpected visitors. I almost let myself believe it was over. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Caldwell. This is Jennifer Ramirez from Adult Protective Services in Collier County. I'm calling regarding a report we received about your welfare. Do you have a moment to talk? My blood ran cold. What kind of report? We received a call from your daughter, Evelyn Caldwell Martinez, expressing concern that you may be experiencing cognitive decline and making unsafe financial decisions. She's worried about your well-being and has requested a welfare check. So this was their next move. If they couldn't guilt me or manipulate me, they would try to have me declared incompetent. Miss Ramirez, I said, keeping my voice steady, I can assure you that I am of completely sound mind. In fact, I believe this call is part of a pattern of harassment from my daughter and her husband, who have been financially exploiting me for years. There was a pause. Mr. Caldwell, these are serious allegations on both sides. Would you be willing to meet with me in person so I can assess the situation myself? Yes. When would you like to come? Would tomorrow morning work? Around 10 o'clock? That would be fine. I'll have my attorney present as well, if that's acceptable. Another pause. That's certainly your right, Mr. Caldwell. I called Edwin immediately after hanging up. He was not surprised. This is a common tactic, he said grimly. If they can get you declared incompetent, Evelyn could potentially get power of attorney and access to your finances again. We need to be prepared. Tomorrow morning, we document everything. That night, I organized every piece of evidence I had collected. Bank statements showing years of one-way financial flow, the texts and emails, medical documentation from my cardiologist confirming I was in excellent health for my age, with no signs of cognitive impairment. I had actually had a full cognitive assessment just 4 months ago as part of routine preventive care, and I had scored perfectly normal. I also gathered character references. Marcus wrote a brief letter attesting to my mental clarity and sound judgment. Dorothy Kim from my book club did the same. Even my neighbor, Helen Santos, who had lived next door for 12 years, wrote a statement saying I was sharp, independent, and fully capable. Jennifer Ramirez arrived promptly at 10 o'clock the next morning. She was a kind-faced woman in her 40s with a tablet and a calm, professional demeanor. Edwin was already there, sitting beside me at my dining room table. Mr. Caldwell, I appreciate you meeting with me, Jennifer began. I want to be clear that these visits are not adversarial. Our only goal is to ensure the safety and well-being of vulnerable adults in our community. I understand, I said. What would you like to know? For the next 40 minutes, Jennifer asked questions about my daily routine, my finances, my health, my mental state. I answered each one calmly and specifically, providing documentation where relevant. Edwin interjected occasionally with legal clarifications, but mostly he let me speak for myself. You seem very organized, Jennifer observed. I was a civil engineer for 40 years, I said. Organization was fundamental to my job. Can you tell me about your relationship with your daughter? This was it, the moment of truth. I told her everything. Not emotionally, not defensively, but factually. The pattern of financial requests, the absence of reciprocal care, the text message telling me not to call, the recent escalating harassment. I showed her the text from Oliver admitting they had kept me around for money. I showed her the bank statements. I showed her my medical records proving cognitive health. Jennifer's expression grew more serious as I spoke. When I finished, she turned to Edwin. And you're representing Mr. Caldwell in what capacity? Elder law, Edwin said. Mr. Caldwell came to me several weeks ago after recognizing a pattern of financial exploitation. We've been working together to protect his assets and well-being. Jennifer nodded slowly, making notes on her tablet. Then she looked directly at me. Mr. Caldwell, I'm going to be frank with you. In my professional opinion, you are clearly of sound mind. You're articulate, organized, and have taken appropriate steps to protect yourself from what does appear to be financial exploitation. However, I am obligated to follow up on this report thoroughly. That means I'll need to speak with your daughter as well. I understand. I should warn you that this may escalate the situation. It's already escalated, I said quietly. I'm just finally fighting back. Jennifer left after completing her assessment. She promised to file her report within 2 weeks. As soon as she was gone, Edwin turned to me. "You did beautifully, but Noah, you need to prepare yourself. They're going to be contacted by APS, and they're going to know their tactic didn't work. This could get worse before it gets better." He was right. That evening, I received a call from Oliver's phone. I didn't answer, but the voicemail he left was chilling. "You called social services on us? You're trying to destroy us, you pathetic, vindictive old man. Well, congratulations. You just made things 1,000 times worse. We're going to make sure everyone knows what you've done. Your friends, your neighbors, everyone. You're going to end up completely alone, and it'll be exactly what you deserve." I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Edwin. His response was immediate. "Forward this to APS as well. This is exactly what they need to see." 4 days later, Jennifer Ramirez called again. "Mr. Caldwell, I've completed my investigation. I'll be filing a report that finds no evidence of cognitive decline or need for intervention on your behalf. However, I am also filing a separate report documenting what appears to be financial exploitation and harassment. This will be forwarded to the appropriate authorities." "Thank you," I whispered. "Mr. Caldwell, your daughter and her husband are very angry. Please be careful. If they contact you again or show up at your property, document everything and don't hesitate to call the police." I promised I would be careful, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was simply ready for whatever came next. What came next shocked everyone, including me. 2 weeks later, Edwin called with news that made my hands go numb. "Noah, sit down. I just got off the phone with a detective from the Miami-Dade Police Department, Economic Crimes Unit." My heart sank. "What happened?" "Evelyn and Oliver have been arrested. Fraud, identity theft, and financial crimes. Apparently, they'd been running a sophisticated scam for years, taking out credit cards and loans in other people's names, including yours." I felt the room spin. "Mine? 3 credit cards, total debt of $47,000. They'd been making minimum payments using the money you gave them, but once that stopped, the cards defaulted, and the investigation started. The good news is that you're a victim here, not liable for the debt. The bad news is that your daughter is facing serious felony charges." I should have felt something: sadness, guilt, a parental instinct to protect her. Instead, I felt only a grim validation. "There's more," Edwin continued. "Oliver has a record. This isn't his first time running this kind of scam. He's done it to 2 previous partners and their families. Evelyn was just his latest mark, though she became a willing participant." So that was the truth. My daughter hadn't just been irresponsible. She had been a criminal, enabled and eventually corrupted by a con artist. "What happens now?" I asked. "They'll both likely face prison time. Evelyn might get a reduced sentence if she cooperates and testifies against Oliver. But Noah, they're going to be out of your life for quite a while." I waited for the grief to hit. It didn't. Instead, I felt something close to relief. 6 months after the arrests, I stood in my kitchen making coffee for 7 people, something I hadn't done in years. Marcus was bringing bagels from the Good Bakery on 3rd Street. Dorothy from book club was coming with her husband, whom I had recently met at a literary event. Helen Santos from next door was bringing her famous key lime pie. Edwin Harper was stopping by with his wife, Sarah, whom I had met at a charity fundraiser last month. And there was someone else coming too. Rita Morales, a retired school teacher I had met at the Veterans Volunteer event 3 months ago. Rita and I had been seeing each other casually. Nothing serious yet, just coffee dates and long walks on the beach and easy conversation. She made me laugh. She never once asked me for money. She listened when I talked about Susan without jealousy or impatience. She was kind and sharp and independent, and being around her reminded me that life still held possibilities I had forgotten existed. My home, once a tomb of silence and waiting, had become alive again. "Noah, your garden looks amazing," Marcus called from the back patio. I had taken up gardening in the spring, transforming my neglected backyard into something beautiful. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs, bougainvillea, hibiscus. Things I had never had time for when I was constantly worrying about Evelyn's next crisis. "It's my therapy," I said, bringing out a tray of coffee mugs. "Cheaper than actual therapy, and better for my mental health." Everyone laughed. We gathered around my dining room table and talked about everything and nothing: books, politics, upcoming community events, travel plans. Dorothy's daughter had just gotten engaged. Marcus was planning a fishing trip to the Keys. Rita was telling a hilarious story about her grandson's science fair project. For the first time in years, my home felt like a home again. "How are you doing, really?" Edwin asked quietly during a lull in conversation. "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. Better than I've been in a very long time. It was true. In the months since cutting Evelyn out of my life, I had rediscovered who I was beyond being her father and her ATM. I had reconnected with old Navy friends. I had increased my volunteer hours with the Veterans Organization. I had traveled to Savannah and Charleston, trips I had always wanted to take but never could because there was always some emergency that needed funding. My bank account, for the first time in 8 years, was growing instead of shrinking. I had enough saved now that I could actually consider the things I had postponed for so long. Maybe a river cruise through Europe, maybe finally replacing my ancient car, maybe just the peace of mind that came with financial security. "Have you heard anything about Evelyn?" Rita asked gently. "She's serving 18 months at Lowell Correctional in Ocala," I said. Edwin had been keeping me updated on the legal proceedings, but I hadn't had any direct contact. Oliver got 4 years. He had priors, so his sentence was longer. Their attorneys tried to argue that Oliver had manipulated her, that she was a victim too. Maybe there's some truth to that. But she was an adult making adult choices, and she hurt me long before Oliver entered the picture. "Do you send her anything?" Dorothy asked. $50 a month for commissary," I confirmed. "Not because she deserves it, but because I'm not her. I won't let someone go hungry if I can help it. But that's where it ends. No extra support. No promises of help when she gets out. No visits." Edwin nodded approvingly. "That's healthy. You're helping her survive without enabling her." The conversation moved on to lighter topics. But later, after everyone had left and Rita had kissed me gently goodbye at the door, I stood in my clean kitchen and looked at the photographs on my refrigerator. I had taken down all the old pictures of Evelyn. In their place were new memories. Marcus and me holding a massive grouper we had caught on our fishing trip, my book club at our annual dinner, Rita and me at a sunset concert in Cambier Park, both of us mid-laugh. A photo of my volunteer group presenting a check to a homeless veterans shelter. A new life, built from the ashes of the old one. One evening in October, I received a letter forwarded from Lowell Correctional Institution, Evelyn's handwriting on the envelope. I held it for a long time before opening it. The letter was 4 pages long, written on lined paper in Evelyn's familiar looping script. "Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to write back. But I needed you to know that I finally understand what you were trying to tell me. About responsibility, about consequences, about what it means to actually stand on your own feet. Prison is awful, but maybe I needed awful to wake up. Oliver filed for divorce. Good. I see now how he used me, how he twisted my thinking, how he made me believe that using you was somehow justified. I'm not saying I'm blameless. I made my own choices. I said terrible things to you. I treated you like you were nothing more than a bank account. I'm sorry for everything. For taking you for granted, for the things I said, for the pain I caused, for not being there when you needed me, for not appreciating all the sacrifices you made raising me alone after Mom died. I don't know if sorry is enough. It probably isn't. I've been in therapy here, mandatory at first, but now I actually want to go. I'm learning things about myself that are hard to face. I'm learning that I've been running from Mom's death my whole life, and I took it out on you. When I get out, I don't expect anything from you. I don't expect a relationship or money or help. I just hope that maybe someday you can think of me without anger. I love you. I should have said it more. I should have shown it better. Evelyn. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I would respond. Maybe someday we would rebuild something, some kind of relationship that respected boundaries and acknowledged past harm. But not today. Today I was choosing myself, and it felt like the most loving thing I had ever done. They say blood is thicker than water, but the full quote is different. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we are born into. I learned that being a good father does not mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it means letting your child fall so they can learn to stand. Sometimes love requires boundaries instead of blank checks. I lost my daughter, but I found myself. $412,000, 8 years of exploitation, one text message that changed everything. Was I wrong? Was I cruel to cut her off when she needed help? You tell me, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have kept giving until there was nothing left? Or would you have drawn the line like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between family and self-preservation? Share your story. You might help someone else find their courage. And if my story resonated with you, please subscribe to this channel. Because everyone deserves to know they are not alone in their battles, especially when those battles are with the people who are supposed to love us most. Thank you for listening to mine. God bless you, and remember that choosing yourself is not selfish. Sometimes it is survival,